Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new TEAM therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda.
Hello, David. And welcome to all our listeners around the country and throughout the galaxy. This is episode 338 of the Feeling Good podcast. And even though we're laughing right now, today's subject is quite serious. We're going to be talking about grief, and we're going to be talking to our beloved Canadian therapist. I don't know where I was going with that. Team therapist, Mike Christensen. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing well, Rhonda. Thanks for asking. It's always great to be here and to hang out with you and David.
Yes. And, I introduced you as our Canadian therapist because you're the director of the Feeling Good Institute's Canada chapter. Sorry. And, you do so much for the team community. You lead one of the original and the newbie groups for Teamsters all over the country and all over the world. And so many of our team therapists have started their training with you.
Yeah,
and also,
been awesome.
Mike and I have go way back, at least 10 years or more, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
and
right around 10, a little more over 10 years. I think 2009 was the first time we actually met, but
1909 or 2009.
Yeah.
No, it was
2009, really?
When we first met. Burns has lost it entirely. Doesn't even know what century it is. Yeah, and it was so much fun for you podcast listeners. Mike used to be a minister in Canada and used to be a kind of a professional cyclist as well, and then got into the psychotherapy business. And came to a number of my intensives, and we would go on hikes in the evenings of the intensives, and I got to know you, Mike, and really came to like you and love you, and I was always pushing you to become a team therapist and get into the community and become a teacher, and now you've done that, and but We haven't had a chance to hang out for a long time because of COVID, and so I'm just so grateful to hang out with you again today.
Well, it's always fun to get together with you too, David. I'll never forget the first time I saw you speak was at a mental health conference, and then I went up and met you. And when you were doing an intensive shortly after that, I thought, I got to go to this. And I thought you must have seen something in me, whether it's just raw determination or what it was, but you just encouraged and supported me so much, and to have had the opportunity to work together over these years. And it's just been, really life-changing for me, and such a privilege. And I feel the same way about Rhonda. Rhonda was actually one of my students when I was just first started teaching TEAM, and now to have had the opportunity to collaborate. And we worked together in Poland this last year at the World Congress there. And so it just feels like a kind of family get-together hanging out with you too.
Yeah, that's right.
Definitely.
I have a quick question for you before Rhonda gets us officially started, but given that you were a minister for a period of time, and then when I was born, it was determined that I was supposed to be a minister, but I kind of rebelled and went in another direction. But when I used to do my Sunday hikes, and it's too bad you never were able to go on one of those. Maybe we'll have a chance to do them again one day, but I would be working with people, and we hiked on Sunday mornings, and I could often, heal 1 or 2 or 3 people on a typical Sunday hike, and then we'd go out for dim sum afterwards, which is a special kind of Chinese food that we all loved. But I always felt like this kind of is religious worship in a way, just being in the world and healing people. And I still feel like when we're doing team therapy, particularly when at the moment of change and when you get to the deeper level of self-acceptance and the other more spiritual aspects of team, I often feel like it is kind of a spiritual work, although in a secular context. And I was just wondering if you ever feel that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the things that drew me to team, is just aligned so well with my belief system. And, certainly from that kind of Christian, if you know the truth will set you free. And it's one of the key things about team is we work together to help them kind of dispel the lies that they believe about themselves, and the freedom that they then get is remarkable. And, I feel like it's such an honor, really a sacred place when you get to walk with people in their pain and help them to find relief.
Joy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, I'm going to officially get started now. So I'm going to read.
We're done. That was the main thing we wanted to say.
Okay, see you next week.
Given our high speed.
So I'm going to read 2 really quick endorsements that people have emailed you, David. One is regarding episode 330, which, if people recall, that was on Team with Tots with our Israeli colleague, Dor Star. And Isaac wrote in and said, "Hi, Dr. Burns. This was a great podcast. I'm a school psychologist, so I found the discussion quite interesting and applicable. Please consider having more child and adolescent therapists on the podcast talking about TEAM-CBT. Thanks so much, Isaac."
Cool. Thank you, Isaac.
Yeah. And then I have another great endorsement about episode 331, which featured the amazing Dr. Irving Kirsch, the research giant, Dr. Irving Kirsch. And Debbie wrote and said, "I have to agree with everything you talked about. Although an antidepressant did shut off my receptors for worry, however, I still had to deal with my life. You can't just go on a drug and not do anything, which is what some people think. While it calms part of your brain, you still have to do the work. I myself have looked very closely about this. This was mind-blowing news and research. So thanks, Dr. Burns, Dr. Kirsch, and Rhonda."
Well, thank you. Is it Debbie or Deborah?
Oh, so it was Debbie. I actually combined.
Oh, yeah,
Debbie. She worked on this very closely, and then Al wrote, "It was mind-blowing news and research. Thanks, Dr. Burns." Yeah, sorry. That was confusing.
Awesome. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive into the topic for today, and thank you all who write in with the kind comments, occasional criticism that we can learn from, but so much warmth and support and good questions for the Ask David episode. So we really appreciate your support for our efforts.
Yeah. So honestly, this podcast got its beginning because in Poland, I said to Mike, "We want to get you back onto the podcast. Can you think of something that you want to talk about?" And Mike emailed me and said, "I have an idea. Let's talk about grief." And David thought that was a great idea, as did I. And so, Mike, lead us into your thought process about why this was a topic that came to you.
Yeah, this is, in the course that I teach, we talk about conceptualization. And David, I think one of David's real brilliant contributions is making really complex things simple for us, mere mortals to understand. And he breaks down kind of conceptualization to like 4 baskets, right? It's either a mood problem, depression or anxiety, or a habit or addiction, or relationship problem. But then he's also got one that he calls a non-problem. And that's sometimes a hard one for us to wrap our mind around, because it involves things like grief or kind of normal life stress, normal life transition. And it's hard to find a good name for it. But I don't know if you want to talk more about kind of non-problem, David, but the idea of grief came up for me just because I had an experience. And as with so many of our clients and patients, people have significant losses in their life. And I had an experience in January where a very dear friend of mine very suddenly and tragically passed. And it got me really thinking about this idea of kind of non-problem and how we conceptualize that. So I don't know, David, did you want to maybe talk about that a little bit before I dive into the story?
I'm more interested in hearing what you have to say. I would say that in the context of grief, in fact, I think it was our last podcast ended up on grief, working with Marius, and we started out with perfectionism, and then healthy grief became the solution to cry, to open up, and as a way of getting close to his wife and his patients and himself as well. And I think of a non-problem as being something that maybe someone just needs to talk and be listened to and experience the feelings, and that there aren't a lot of distorted thoughts that need fancy footwork. And most of the time, people do have distorted thoughts, contaminating relationship problems or causing depression, causing anxiety. But grief without distorted thoughts can sometimes be a very powerful and beautiful experience. And sometimes people need to be encouraged to grieve more, not to get over their sadness. But beyond that, I don't think I have much to say. So I'm going to speak with my ears for a while.
Well, I love that setup because it really affirms much of my journey over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and continues to be affirmed. I'll tell you a little bit about what happened, and I've experienced some pretty significant losses in my life in the past. When I was 15 years old, a very close friend of mine was killed in a car accident. She's like an older sister to me, and she and I had the same birthday, so our families would do birthdays together. She's like a second mom almost, and I still think about her every time on my birthday. And then David, as you know, my wife and I lost a son, and we often think of the loss of the future joys and the future experiences and those things, right? For some, it's the loss of what we've had in the past and not missing that. And for others, it's the loss of what is to come. And both those dynamics can be at play. And then in January, it was, there's a group of guys. I used to be a pretty high level cyclist who did the national championships when I was younger. And I'd met a guy who was about 7-8 years younger than me. As I was coming up, we were teammates for a little while back in the 90s, and we'd interacted on various occasions over the years. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, he invited me to join his online cycling racing team. There's a program where you hook up your stationary bike to a computer, and then it uploads, and you can race against each other. And the technology's come now where it's incredibly realistic. The pain and suffering when you're racing each other is very realistic. And he was pulling together a little bit of a team and invited me to be a part of it. And I hadn't really done much racing for a while, but he and 3 other guys, we kind of got together and just started riding, and then COVID hit. And so really took on a whole nother life, because almost all the cyclists ever around the world were on this program, because it's the only place we could race. And so we were spending almost every evening together, because we, just like we were talking right now, we would talk to each other online while we were racing with each other. And
on a stationary bicycle, or out?
Yeah, you actually hook up your racing bike to a kind of a stand that has a motor in it, and it measures your power and your heart rate and your cadence and all these things. And it's called Zwift. If anybody wants, you can just Google it and look. There's races on there. And he was the kind of leader of our group. He was also by far the most talented. He was actually national champion as a junior. And last year, he made the national team for the World Championships on Zwift, and which was a huge accomplishment. He was ranked top 3 in Canada, and I think as of January the 17th, he was number 59 in the world on Zwift. And I think there's about, I know they say there's like 700,000 or 800,000 people on it. So he's really a remarkable and incredible guy. His name was Kris Yip, and Kris was this incredible guy because he was so humble, and he would encourage everyone no matter what level you were at. Two of the other guys and myself were, certainly not at Kris's level, but pretty high level cyclists. And then another guy that joined our team was just a real go-getter, and he was kind of coming up through the ranks. And he would encourage all of us as if we were, going for the world championships ourselves. It didn't matter what level we were at or what event we were doing. And a lot of times we would just be online doing what we call recovery rides, right? Where you just chat, much like you do on the hikes, David. When you get out and you're doing things together, the opportunity to connect and get to know each other just develops these bonds. And so we had a chat group, and we would chat almost every day. What ride are you doing tonight? Where are you guys going to go? What's your next event? And if Kris had a big event, we'd all watch online and be cheering him on, because I think vicariously we all kind of lived through his success because he was the best. and just one of the most humble guys you'd ever meet. In fact, one of the things I tried with him was, we do the David Letterman technique. I think we call it the talk show host technique, where you try to get the other person talking about themselves, because then they'll like you more. He was so gifted at that. I don't think he ever knew what it was, but I tried to do it to him, but he would always turn it back, and he'd say, "Oh, well, enough about me. Let's hear more about you. Tell me about your kids. Tell me, how did your last race go?" He was always so, generous with his time and focused on others. And on January the 18th, he was doing a recovery ride. And for whatever reason, none of the rest of us were on that ride scheduling. We'd done rides earlier in the week together. But it just, his heart stopped. And he was gone. And Thursday morning, he didn't show up for work, and he didn't upload his ride. And one of the other guys we've been chatting in the chat about an event that was going to take place Saturday, and he was always the one that instigated kind of the connections in the chats, and he just didn't respond, and it was really strange. And then Thursday night, my buddy Neil, who was his best friend, they spent hours and hours together, phoned me, and he just said, "Mike, Kris is gone." And we're just in shock, because he was the fittest of us all. He was the youngest of our group. And we're just stunned, right? And over the next few days, just the impact it had on me was profound. I had a tough time sleeping, and just felt like get confused and shocked, certainly sad in disbelief, just surreal. Like I would go into the room where I have my bike all set up and everything, and I just couldn't even get on my bike. It just was like it felt wrong. And I began to think to myself, okay, I'm a therapist. I do team. I work with people all the time. I've been a minister that has, officiated a lot of funerals. I've been asked to sing at numerous, memorial services, and I should be able to keep it together here, right? And I didn't feel like I was. I feel like I was kind of falling apart. And it just was this kind of unreal experience, right? And then started thinking about, his mom and his sister and his two boys, which they're adults now, but the impact on them. And fortunately, I had the opportunity. He lives about 5 hours away from me, same town where my brother lives. So I had the opportunity to actually go out and spend a week out in Prince George with my buddies there and with his family, and be able to connect with his mom and be at the memorial and share a few words and just cry together and just be together. And as I was sharing this with some of my colleagues at FGI, we have a weekly kind of staff development meeting, and that week was our community connections meeting where we just kind of share what's going on. And I was sharing with a few of my colleagues. It had been a hard week. Unfortunately, my caseload was a little lower that week. And they were just amazing because they just did exactly what you've taught us to do, David, which is not try to fix anything, not to try to give any advice, not help, but just offer empathy, just be together. And it just felt like a kind of a warm hug, even though it's, online and from a distance. Even when I interacted with Rhonda, she sent me a very touching and lovely email of support and warmth. And I got an email from Cheryl Delaney, who's one of our FGI therapists. And one of the things she said in the email was, I hope you're feeling sad.
Yeah.
Just giving me permission to feel that sadness.
Are you feeling that now?
Yeah, absolutely. As I was thinking about coming to the podcast and thought, I've got to be talking about Kris, and a lot of the thoughts that come were, he should still be here. He's too young to go, right? And I think, are those distorted? No, they're not.
Yeah, sure.
And I miss him. Like when we go to get on the bike, you'd always check to see who's on right now, and then, oh hey, you want to hop on Discord? It's a kind of gaming platform that you use to communicate with each other when you're on gaming sites, and you want to hop on Discord, and just he's not there when we hop on, and it is sad every time I think about him.
When you're feeling cheerful and saddest, are there pictures in your mind that you're visualizing, thinking of him? What thoughts? What about it is brings on the sadness for you, Mike?
Yeah.
You said he was just a highly talented fellow, but very humble and encouraging to others, and obviously he affected you profoundly. Tell us some more about those feelings, and what was the part of it that brought the most tears for you?
Yeah. Such a good question. Thank you for asking, David. I think it's, when I go into I call it my bike room. It's also kind of my home office. When I go into the bike room and I hop on, and I'm going to do what we call a recovery ride, where you're not going to ride very hard. And because he was always on, right? Like last year, he rode 365 days of the year.
Wow.
And so he's always there, right? Almost every evening. Sometimes, he would be earlier and later, but there'd be at least, kind of one of the guys on, and most of the time it was him. And knowing that you'd go on and he'd say, hey, let's just do a recovery ride. This is where we're going to go. And how's your week been? How's your day? Right. and just missing his voice. Hearing him ask about the events, and then being able to ask him about his, right? Like, he was in kind of the pro level league. And so, how did your event get recruited to race for a team called Wahoo Lacole, which is out of Europe? And I said, how'd the team do? And he goes, oh yeah, I did okay. And then he'd go back later and he was like, top 10. Like, this mind-blowing performance.
Yeah.
And then you could go back and watch the video, because he would videotape them and then put them on YouTube, and you'd watch him just suffering, like just, digging so deep, right?
Oh, wow.
There's something about, when you suffer together, there's a bond that you have.
Definitely is. Yeah.
And, we're like, I'm 54, but it was like we're kids again. We just get to play on our bikes. And, he's not there to play with us anymore.
Yeah.
It's kind of silly, but,
yeah.
Missing, what is to come, those events, those other things, but also missing what was.
Yeah. And missing who he was to you.
Yeah.
You described he's a source of encouragement and support, but also really warmth and love. Companionship.
At his memorial service, it was just over and over again, people saying how he just touched people's lives, like in his business world. How so many people didn't even know he was really much of a cyclist, which is hard for us to imagine, right? Like, when I got up to share, I said, there's not very many things I was better at than Kris. Every time we'd race a ride, he would always be better than me. But I'm better at bragging than he is, so I'm going to brag on his behalf right now. And I read some of his accomplishments and some of his results, and chatting with his sister, she didn't know some of his accomplishments because he was just so humble.
Wow, only his sister didn't know his accomplishments.
It's just such a safe place to be. There's those people when you get together with them and you just feel good afterwards. Mm-hmm. Like, you just feel encouraged or inspired, or, there's no drain at all, right? That was Kris for everyone.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in the consultation group with the people at FGI, Mike, it sounds like you use that as an opportunity to share your feelings and get support and empathy. Were you in that group or with other team therapists able to go through any grief methods, or have you gotten to that stage that you even want to do that?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, Rhonda, because really we were just doing kind of a community connection. It wasn't even a consultation group necessarily. We weren't kind of working on anything specific. It was just getting to know each other. And I just shared at the beginning that, because I'm usually such a upbeat, kind of energetic, happy guy. And I said, I'm just having a tough time. And they just asked, and really they just offered empathy. And it was such a huge, powerful way of being kind of held in that moment. And there was just this like healing in a sense that everything was going to be okay, even though it's not. Like, it was okay to be sad. I was given permission just to be sad. And over the next few days after that, I just allowed myself to be really sad. I just allowed myself to cry whenever I needed to, and be in that space. And I was working with a client just yesterday, and disguise things. And so he's a young man whose grandfather is starting to fail a little bit, and you're feeling bad about feeling sad, right? And so we'd done, it's kind of a mood log with the moment in time when they're feeling kind of anxious and a bit sad. And then when we did the positive reframe, we looked at all beautiful things about being sad, right? And so I've done a little bit of that with myself, right, on my own. Like, what are all the beautiful things about sadness? You know, because with my client, they were feeling 70% sad, and we began listing all the beautiful things, right?
What are some of the beautiful things about the sadness you're feeling for Kris?
You know, it honors the depth of the relationship that we had, right, amongst all of us. You know, the guys. Like, it also motivates the bond. I mean, Kris was always the one that drove the bus for our group, in a sense. He was the one who would always say, "Hey, you doing this?" And now each of us, we don't want to lose that group, because that was one of my thoughts, that, oh no, I'm going to lose my group because Kris was the guy. and it's really, you know, even for first few days, nobody texted at all. It was like, we didn't even know if it was okay, but I think it's motivated us to cling more closely to those important relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think even with my team community, I thought, oh, do I share this? I'm kind of one of the directors, you know, and I'm supposed to be kind of a leader and strong. And I think it helped me to, in a sense, just be open and real and honest with others, because others experience it too, right? Mm-hmm. Like you'd mentioned, Ron, I've worked with some people that have experienced significant loss of children. It also is well, I think you've said this before, David, and I don't know if I could say it any better than your words. You said those tears are like, they're the purest form of love that we can have.
Yeah, that's right.
So the sadness is a real demonstration of caring and love. And
yeah, I love what you're saying, and then also your tears keep him alive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one of the things that we did, his mom was amazing. They actually held a wake at his home. There's some kind of traditional aspects in his family, and so they had his bikes all set up in the garage, kind of facing outwards, right, like ready to go, right. And one of our guys, Neil, his best friend, had, you know, polished them up, and then they also had all his jerseys over the years, and so we were going through them, and when we were teammates back in the 90s, he still had those jerseys, so I got pictures of those, you know, with me and him, and then some of his more recent ones. You know, we can watch the videos of some of his races still, right? And so it definitely keeps. I mean, that's one of the gifts that we have now, is, you know, we have some recordings of actually seeing him, and I've gone back and watched some of his races, and, you know, because he was such a teacher too.
Yeah, you said that when I hop on for a recovery ride, he'd be there every day. You're saying he was there riding 365 days a year, and you said that what you miss a lot is his voice.
Yeah,
and also, I guess you could get videos of each other while riding on your bicycles, perhaps from your cell phone cameras or something like that.
Yeah, he had a whole setup. It's one of the requirements at the pro level league. You had to actually record yourself riding, and, you know, upload your weight and the rest of that to make it legit. And so I see. Set up. So that's why he had it all recorded.
And you have memories of his face, that he would be suffering and digging so deep.
And still smiling some of the time too.
Yeah,
it's because you love that part of it, right?
Yeah. And you say that you say I'm 54, but we were kids and we could play when we were on our bicycles every day and connecting together, riding together. And you say your sorrow, and you said this with regard to the son that you lost as well, that there's the grief about losing what you had, losing what was, and also losing what would have come, the future good times that we can't have. And you also said that you want to brag for him. You admired him intensely, especially because he was so humble, and he would always want to get the other person talking about yourself and showing an interest in you. And after every interaction, he was you felt lighter and encouraged and inspired by him. Do you ever talk to him?
That's a good question.
Or maybe spend time with him?
Yeah, I've been asked that before, but it's a good question, because there's times where in my mind I've been a little, pissed off at him that he's not here anymore.
Oh yeah.
It's like, you bugger, it should have been someone else.
Yeah, right. Sure.
And and what happened was, something afterwards, we found in the autopsy report, it was something that wouldn't have been predictable. It just, and he didn't suffer. It was very, very quick. And one of those things that if, you hadn't had a long history in the family that had identified it. In fact, his writing might have kept him kind of alive longer, and we'll never know those questions. But there's times when I'm like, and there's other times when I'm riding now, because we're back riding, getting together, that I feel like, I should, I'm not really in with the lead group or whatever right now. I'm not feeling it today, and I should just kind of ease off. And then I can kind of hear his voice, right? And he would use these two phrases. He would say, before every event, he would say, okay, Mike or Neil or Ron or Frank, those are the other guys. He'd say, just crush it, boys, crush it, right? And then when you're in the race, he's like, okay, here comes the big hill, time to smash it, right? And that was like our, those were his words. And so I still hear his voice, now, in those moments in events when we're really hurting. And I think that's so true, David, that sadness is keeping him kind of alive in our hearts and our memories. And
I was telling Rhonda that whenever I go out on I call it slogging because I'm so slow, I can't call it jogging anymore. It's barely walking. But I try to get a little distance in every day. I get this low back pain, so I can't go. A mile is all I can do right now, because for whatever reason I get this back pain on both sides. But at a certain place on every hike, I always talk to Obie, my best pal, my cat who died, and Marilyn Coffy.
Yeah, I was thinking about her.
Yeah, and also Anne Hantz, who was a woman who died when I was in Philadelphia, and of ovarian cancer, actually. And I kind of talked to her a little bit too. I don't say a whole lot, but I just feel like I'm kind of with them, and then I look around. If there's a little bird flying by, I say, "Was that you, Obie?" And stuff like that. It's kind of goofy, but David, I kind of enjoy being with them a little bit, like that.
It reminds me of a story that you've told on a number of occasions that has actually been helpful for me. I've thought of it on a few different occasions. And I'll remind you of it, and maybe you can, I don't know if you want to tell it again or whether you've told it on podcasts or not, but it was of a gentleman that you were working with who met this woman who had a son, and they were into kind of extreme skiing.
Yeah, right. Right. Exactly. How did that story help you?
Well, I think.
Let's summarize the story.
Well, like it was. I haven't had a formal practice. Like a real private practice where I have patients or anything, but I treat people all the time, and sometimes just in a spontaneous situation. And I was had met this fellow from Santa Cruz who was a businessman, and he just mentioned that he'd been depressed for about 10 years and had taken Prozac and things, and nothing had been helpful to him. And I mentioned that we had this new team therapy type of thing that we were working with, and he was interested in giving it a try. So he came over to my home here. I don't think you've ever been down here, have you, Mike?
Not yet. It's on my list.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be great to have you. Yeah. And then there's COVID lurking right around the corner. My wife just got it. Rhonda, but she's doing well. But at any rate, he came to the house, and he had met this woman who had a son, and she was divorced, and he married her, and he made it his goal in life to help this boy, because the boy was going with the wrong crowd and doing badly in school and getting in trouble with the police. And I just kind of disguised it a little bit, but that he was this extreme skier. You've probably seen on TV where they go over these steep slopes and stuff, and he taught the boy extreme skiing, and the boy blossomed. He straightened out his life, and actually, he started helping this boy before he got married to the boy's mom, and the boy was the best man at his wedding, and he was just so proud of the boy, and they were so close. And then on the day of his wife's birthday, he happened to go skiing with his son, and they were in some real severe area of all these severe slopes in Colorado, and they were I guess they were all there for a holiday or something like that, and they said, we've got to go back and get back because it's your mom's birthday today, and we want to make sure we're there in time, and all of this. And the boy said, well, there's this one more slope, can I just go over it, because I've never done that one, and apparently it's a real challenging one, and he kept protesting, and the boy kept arguing, so he said, okay, we'll do that run. And on the run, the boy made a wrong turn, went over a 60-foot cliff and hit the rocks below, and it was horrible. And the fellow that I was working with called for the helicopters to come, and he was able to ski down to where the boy was, and he was sitting. He was still alive. I think he had a broken neck or something like that, and he said, I remember looking at him, and he had saved up his money to have ski goggles like mine, real expensive ski goggles. And he was just looking up at me with so much love in his eyes, and he died there in my arms. And he said, ever since that moment, I've been horribly depressed because I feel like I killed my wife's only son, only child. And people try to cheer me up and tell me it wasn't my fault and all that crap that people do instead of listening. And those things never helped. And I don't know if it's hopeless or whatever, but I just can't get over it. And then I asked him, well, what have you been doing in the time since he died? Because it had been a number of years, like 10 years. And he said, well, I used to make like hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and I could easily do that now, but I don't. I'm barely making enough to survive. And I said, well, what do you do with your time? And he said, well, I work with a fellow and we raise money and buy wheelchairs. And then I take them over to Vietnam when we have enough of them. And I give them to people who have had their legs blown off or a leg blown off by American landmines. And he said, we buy inexpensive, good quality, but inexpensive so we can get as many as possible. And you can't imagine the joy that these people feel when we give them a wheelchair so they can be mobile again. And but at any rate, I'm just trying to find out if maybe my case is hopeless or not. And I said, well, I've got all kinds of tools, and sure, I could easily make your depression go away, probably even today. But I don't think I'd want to do that. And he said, why not? And then I got tearful, and I said, because if this is what your depression does to people, maybe the question isn't why are you depressed, but why are the rest of us so happy? And I said, if this is what depression does to you, I don't think I want to take your depression away. And I started crying, and he started crying as well. And again, it was that kind of warmth and connection. Like I'm sure you felt that from the group at the Feeling Good Institute when you were talking and they were empathizing and connecting with you. And it was such a beautiful moment. And that was kind of central in my learning too, because, I was just beginning to see how beautiful negative feelings can be. And that's what led to the full blossoming of team therapy, where you see how beautiful anger is, and anxiety and loneliness and inadequacy and guilt and shame and all of these things. But it had a magical quality that then after that, I said, well, let's take a shot at it. And we just did a daily mood log, and he had a daily mood log where he had deposited, some huge amount of money in a friend's bank, because the friend was starting a bank. And then he needed to withdraw it, like to pay for his house or something like that. And he was feeling guilty and ashamed of thinking that he wanted to withdraw his money from the bank, because he had the fantasy that if he withdrew the money, the bank would go bankrupt. And once that came out and he saw how ridiculous it was, he'd write down, like, I'm going to ruin my friend's bank and it'll be all my fault. And he began to see how ridiculous it was. He started laughing, and he laughed so hard, he fell out of his chair onto the floor. And it was just a fantastic thing. And it was the end of his depression. And he called the next day, and he was just in a state of euphoria. And I thought, boy, this looking at the positive side of negative feelings is great. And then I was just telling Rhonda, probably 2 weeks ago, I probably told this exact story. I'm so sorry. But he contacted me about 5 or 6 or 7 years later, said, listen, I really need to get together for you for a lunch. And I said, oh yeah, I'd love to see you. And he said, I just wanted you to know that I've been feeling great ever since, we had that session. But I wanted to give you something because I know you don't charge any money, didn't charge me any money to end my depression. And he's a collector, and I can't tell you what he collects, but he gave me something, and he said, in his area of collecting, he said, this is the rarest one of these in the world.
Wow.
And it's the only known perfect specimen.
Wow.
And it was just, just made me feel so sad again in a kind of joyous way. And so we put it on display in our cabinet in our living room. We got this free display cabinet from somebody when we moved out here to California. But it was, that I just think there can be tremendous, power in sadness without distortion. It's just like you said that, he does his same two thoughts. He's too young to go, and I miss him. And that's what he was feeling too about his stepson. And what a beautiful thing. And so I guess a simple take-home message is to know the difference between healthy grieving, which is a beautiful thing, and then depression, which is caused by distorted thoughts, not valid thoughts, and removes you from intimacy and removes you from life. Whereas I think that healthy tears can actually bring miracles. We saw it on a podcast we did with someone in our group whose father, I don't know, did he have terminal cancer and the doctors had given up on him?
Yes, he had multiple bouts of cancer, and he kept beating all of them. And this one, he didn't think he was going to, and no one in his family thought he was going to recuperate.
Yeah, he was too weak for surgery, and they said surgery was the only thing that could save him. And she started crying on the podcast, but again, it was because she loved her father so much.
Yeah,
and he had been such a good father, and she traveled to South America when she was a young woman, and she wanted someone to go with her, and he offered to go. And they had a fantastic adventure together in South America. And I saw her, that must have been 2 years ago that we did that.
Yep.
And oddly, her right after that, and we talked about sadness as celebration and the fact that sometimes tears can cause miracles to happen, or it seems that way. And then right after that, her dad suddenly recovered. And I talked to her like maybe 10 days ago at a Tuesday group 2 weeks ago. And she said her dad's perfect now. I don't know.
It's beautiful.
But,
David, you asked the question, how that story was helpful for me. And I think you hit the nail on the head. And, even from kind of a team perspective, this is exactly what I did with my client just the other day. The key part of that story was how the sadness was such a powerful motivator for him to do remarkable things in this world.
Yeah.
And
it was an expression of his love.
Yeah.
For this young boy who he'd really saved his life. He lost his life, but he'd saved his life.
Yeah. And as I've been reminded of that story over the last few weeks, I'm inspired to interact just a little bit more generously with the people that are around me, right? To be a little bit more like Kris.
Yeah, right. Well, you've always been like that, Mike.
Not that we'll ever fill the gap that he's left, but at the same time, if we can, bring a little bit of that in each of our ways, then, his memory, his life is just a kind of a spark in a sense for the rest of us to be inspired. And that's where, like, even with my client the other day, when we sat down and did a mood log and we began to do the positive reframe, the healing took place right there.
Yeah, that's right.
The homework I gave them was to finish the mood log, but don't challenge any of the thoughts. Just honor the emotions for 1 week and see what happens.
Yeah.
And they came back, and the depression scores were almost zero. And the sadness, right? And I said, well, were you able to feel sad? Oh yeah, 100%. And how was that? It was good.
Yeah. So, I had a patient who came to me for unexplained depression when her children went away to school, to college. And she said it was, I don't know why I'd get depressed, because we had such a beautiful relationship, just like my relationship with my mom when I was growing up. And it turned out that she was on the swimming team, and there was a tournament, and her mom was one of the referees or something, and they shoot the gun and they dive in and they're swimming real hard, and then she said that they said, all you kids have to get out of the pool, and then she looked, and her mother was lying with a crowd around her, lying down, and apparently her mother had a ruptured aortic aneurysm and had died right on the spot. And she had this wonderful relationship with her mother, but her dad said, don't cry. Your mother wouldn't want you to cry. And then when she told this story to me, years later, she started getting tearful, and I just said, I think you really need to cry about that. And then she started crying, and I said, for homework, I want you to go and visit your mother's grave every day and talk to her and cry, and don't fight it, and that type of thing. And then she came back the next week, and like your patient, her depression score had gone to zero, and she was just feeling joy and love again, and she was able to terminate her therapy.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Just thinking about Chris's mom right now. It's just this remarkable woman. She actually did the seniors games. We have a seniors games here, and last year, and Kris went, and when he was like her support crew, it was just he's like the most overqualified guy, support crew person ever.
Yeah.
But just some of her posts recently on Facebook where she's out, for a ski or for a hike, and just, he's right along there kind of with her, and she's just kind of honoring, spending time with him in that space. Right. And,
I feel sad about your loss and close to you, Mike, and I sure appreciate your talking to us and trying to do something really beautiful with the tremendous loss that you've had, and the tremendous friend who you feel so close to, and will feel so close to him for the rest of your life, and to your son as well, and to your dog who died yesterday. I don't minimize the loss of an animal at all. We've had cats, one dog that we lost, and then we've had a lot of cats, and I've loved them all so much, and they've given me so much. And so sometimes I just feel like animals are better than human beings. That probably sounds awful, and they're not better than your Kris, but they're just so innocent, and they give so much love to us, and they're so vulnerable.
Yeah, so loyal, and yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was a lot of tears in my house yesterday, and there will be more today too.
And our little sweetie pie feels kind of rejected, because Melanie and I have to stay in our own rooms with the doors closed, so she feels rejected. And then when I walk past, she looks up and meows, so I'll pet her. And then I get torn, because then I'm going to have to go and wash my hands, because she probably has the COVID germs on her, because she hangs out with Melanie, and sometimes I pet her, and sometimes I don't, and I feel guilty. And sometimes I pet her and then go wash my hands. But she's feeling kind of sad right now. She doesn't know why we're closing our doors to her. And, that type of thing. And it probably seems trivial compared to what other people are going through all over the world. But it's
still so tangible and real. And David, I know we're probably going to wrap up here fairly soon. And
we're not. We're actually scheduled until 5.
Where's he going?
It just reminds me, and just an appreciation and gratitude to you for taking those risks all those years ago with writing the books and putting yourself out there and bringing this gift of team to us that acknowledges how important it is to honor these emotions. And I think of the number of times that we've done kind of co-therapy together, and how we've laughed with people and cried with people, and how you've shared your heart and touched people. And I just feel so honored to be able to continue to kind of build on that work that you've allowed us to be a part of.
Yeah.
Mike, beautifully said, of course. That was gorgeous, and I couldn't agree with you more. And I also feel really grateful and close to you, and so happy that you suggested this as a topic and shared yourself with us and with all the listeners of the podcast. And David, always grateful to you for sharing your tender heart and telling these stories with so much love and compassion.
I have a question for you, Mike. You train therapists who from anywhere in the world with the introductory course to TEAM-CBT. So we'll put in the show notes that if people want to get involved in one of your fantastic 12-week introductions to TEAM-CBT, you probably treat people only in Canada. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm just licensed in Canada. I can do kind of one-to-one teaching and training anywhere. So if people want kind of one-to-one consultation or training, then I can do that across borders. But for actual therapy, I'm just licensed here in Western Canada. So.
And so if there are Canadian, you can't treat people in Eastern Canada, just Western Canada? In
some provinces. They're working on regulation stuff that's always changing. So,
but at any rate, if you're in Canada and you're feeling anxious or depressed and want one of the greatest therapist on planet Earth, think of giving Mike a call. You told me you're doing 50% private practice and 50% teaching, but if you want someone who has incredible technical skills and great compassion as well, like our Matt May, who our listeners are so familiar with in the U.S., and if you want someone like that in Canada, Mike is your go-to guy.
Yeah, we should just acknowledge to wish Matt a happy birthday, because I know it's sometime coming around soon, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that endorsement, David, and I think last time I was on, we did the Deliberate Practice, and our book is almost done, so it should be
that's right,
in the next year. So a little shameless plug for the book that Maor and I are writing on how to become a great team therapist.
I never give book endorsements. The only one I ever gave was Irving Kirsch, who was on our podcast recently. He wrote The Emperor's New Drugs, and I wrote like a foreword or something. But I'm endorsing your book and promising a written endorsement before I even see it, because deliberate practice is so important in the training of therapists. It could be important in the learning of our patients as well, to use the exact same deliberate practice technique. One last quick thing before we depart, because everyone doesn't read the show notes. So if someone wants to contact you to get in one of your training groups or to do therapy with you, how should they contact you?
Yeah, the best way to get a hold of me is through the Feeling Good Institute. They can go right to the feelinggoodinstitute.com website, or they can contact me directly by email, and it's just mike@feelinggoodinstitute.com.
Mike at feelinggoodinstitute.com, and Feeling Good Institute is one word. Feeling Good. Yeah, one long word, institute.com. Well, thank you so much. It's just always a joy hanging out with you and seeing you. And I'm so sorry about your loss, but I guess there's some gain associated with it too.
Well, it's just an absolute pleasure to be here, and looking forward to, I think we're going to do another one before too long. It's been the gap's been too big, and
sure. Do we have a topic yet?
I think we do. Okay. We're narrowing it down, so fine tuning things. So
okay, all right. Sounds good. Oh, and we'll be working together in you and I in Mexico City.
Yes, and then Ron and I will be in London, the UK, working together as well. And
you're also going to be in the UK.
Yeah, we get to hang out together again. So
well, maybe we'll put the contact information for these World Congresses.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And the one in Mexico City, Mike and I are going to do a live demo, and then the one in UK, Rhonda and I are going to do a live demo. So,
woohoo!
Awesome.
Okay, thank you so much, Mike.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, the director of the Feeling Great Therapy Center. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.